Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad to see you so bright and early this morning, as always. Of course, you guys are all late compared to Manny, who shows up 15 minutes early all the time. So, can I embarrass you, Manny?
No. Actually, I'm proud of it.
He's so proud of us. He told us last week. He told us that he likes to.
You gotta be ready.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Okay.
organized people are so hard on us chaotic people.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So a couple of things, as always, with thanks to our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, Valley Sun United Way, Satellite Broadcasting and Communications Association, Khajiit, Triad Wireless, and Karen Ziegler Consulting. Really appreciate all the support. So we have a few new people this morning. Gerardo, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Gerardo, yes.
Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gerardo Martinez. I'm representing a group of partners, family. We just acquired a month ago a company named Sprocket, which provide internet on the southern Arizona from Nogales to Tucson. And we're very grateful that you guys invite us and forward to see a lot of things here together.
Great, welcome. And Brian Louderbacker, you're back. I haven't seen you in a long time.
It is good to be back. Good morning, sir. Thank you for still hosting the call. Yes, you are right. It's been a little while since I've joined you, so thank you very much.
Tell people who you are, Brian.
Yeah, I sure can. Hey, Steve, I sure definitely can. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Louderback. I'm our Director of Sales for Insight Public Sector. We work with many of the cities and counties and education facilities within the state of Arizona and in all aspects of technology. So Steve's done a fantastic job working with us and just from thought leadership and partnerships and so forth. So Steve, you always do a great job on these calls. So I'm looking forward to this one today as well.
Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
We missed you guys. And let's see, I know we had somebody else here that I wanted to, Anna, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ana Licona. I am an analyst at HRNA Advisors and also Broadband Equity Partnership. And we're a consulting firm supporting public sector in producing digital equity plans. So currently working with the state of California, Clark County, Nevada, and other areas across the country. I'm located in Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm happy to be part of this task force and get to know all of you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Glad you could join us. Anybody else that's new that I've missed this morning? Going once, going twice.
This is Karina Jones from the Arizona Department of Education. I am not new, but I am joining in after several months of not coming.
Great.
Hi,
Thanks,
Karina.
Karina, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, anybody else or anybody who's returning? If not, then let's move on. Just a reminder that after this meeting, we do kibitzing with colleagues. For anybody who wants to stay on, we turn off the recording and just chat. So that may be 5 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be 5 people, it might be 1, it might be 10. So it's a very informal opportunity for people to share, to ask questions, share information and so forth. So you're all welcome to stay online afterwards. So next thing quickly is that a couple of folks had suggested maybe we should now think about, now that we're hopefully on the other side of COVID, about changing the day and time of our meetings. What do you think? Is this still a good day and time? Should we be thinking about something different? Comments, thoughts, anybody has?
This works for me. It's a good start to the week.
I concur.
Yes,
Agreed.
this works.
It's
Been
been
doing
great.
it for a couple of years, right? Our days are molded around this at the beginning of the week. So yeah. It's been nice.
Exactly.
I think it's in cement already.
I think that the question was that some folks who want to be here on this call have conflicting meetings and can't always make it on Monday mornings, but that's the way it is. But a couple of them are kind of important people for us, but let's just keep it as it is for now, and we'll think about it again in the future. So with that, I'm going to jump into, as you know, we've kind of changed our agendas around a little bit. And we have two important things to talk about today. One is that Paul Ross is going to give us a good presentation. For those of you in particular who kibitz with us, know that Paul is amazing with the amount of information and resources that are in that head of his. and I was just asking about whether he ever gets any sleep because of all the research that he does. And so we're going to hear from him in just a little bit. And then it's really important for us to talk about the FCC Affordable Connectivity Outreach Grant Program. They have just released information about that. And actually, it's a fairly short, relatively short time frame to submit proposals. So we're going to hear from a couple of folks about that and have some discussion about how we move ahead with that. So we're going to do that before we get into any other updates this morning. So I hope that's okay with everybody. So with that, I want to turn it over to Paul. He's going to talk about, so Paul, I hope I got your title correctly here, about digital equity and digital divide research, data sources, and future research planning. And Paul is, well, I'm going to let Paul tell you who he is rather than me doing that. So
All
Paul,
right.
I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I get the right screen in the right place at the right time. All right, does that look good to everybody? Is that coming through?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, good morning, everybody.
Real quick, Paul, you're taking us back in COVID with your date on your presentation.
Oh, thank you. I'll have to fix that.
We don't want to go back.
Back to the future.
That's true. So I will fix that post. Thanks for pointing that out. In reality, though, when we think about what's been happening since 2020, that's when there's been a lot of activity prior to that. But really, prior to March of 2020, there was efforts to try and do what we're talking about today, which is around digital divide, digital equity, and to try and close the gaps. But really, 2020, with the advent of COVID, really kicked everything into high gear. And so but I will fix that. But thanks for putting that out. So what I want to do today is I'm going to take you through a little bit of a level setting, because there's been lots of terms thrown around over the last couple of years. And I don't think there's really a good sense in the broader conversation as to what those terms mean. So what I've done is I've tried to pull together some of the definitions that people are using, particularly around three terms that are used sometimes interchangeably. But we're going to walk through a couple of different things in the next 20 minutes. I'm not going to talk a lot about my specific project, but I'm going to be talking more about some of the research and some of the endeavors that I've come across. So let's start with this. So the agenda, I'm going to look at digital equity, digital divide, data sources, and future research and planning as it relates to what I'm currently doing and where I'm heading with some of my thoughts and some of my examinations. So just a little bit about me to start with, right? I'm in education, and I'm in education and IT, and I've been doing that for 25 plus years. Thoroughly enjoy what I do. I do it day in, day out. Technically, I've been on call since March of 1993, 24/7. So I'm an IT educational specialist, but I've been able to go across 2 different countries, multiple states, K-12 through to colleges. So I've got an interesting set of experiences there where I've helped, classroom teachers in kindergarten classrooms all the way through to university professors and R1 institutions. But there we go, a little fun fact on for consuming that, yes, I was an accredited field hockey coach with USA Field Hockey, and I still maintain a current superintendent's license as well. Once you get a license, you never let it go. Okay, so then we talk about digital equity, inclusion, and literacy. Now, these are three very important terms for the discussion in the space. And we typically hear a lot about digital equity. Digital equity is probably one of the most synonymous terms that gets connected to the digital divide work. And it's a term that you see frequently, and especially in relation to publications that come out of the NDIA and any sort of public policy work, it is referred to quite frequently. The other one is digital inclusion. Now, that too is one that is quite close to equity, but there is some nuances there as well. And I'll show you some of the definitions that people are using around this in terms of what it means. And then digital literacy. Well, this is one that we hear frequently out of the library world, but it's really more than just libraries. And I think we need to really try and get it out of the library world and more into the general conversation and more into the schools and into actual skill development. And you'll see some of what that is referring to there. And the library world definitely is one of the most grounded areas when it comes to digital literacy. But sometimes these terms get used interchangeably and digital equity is sometimes seen as more of an umbrella term where everything then rolls up into it. Now, this is it's very dependent on your own perspective as to what your focus is. And I think this also reflects in part the space. The space is really multifaceted. And because there are so many interconnected and overlapping components, there's somewhat of a need or a want by people to use more of an umbrella type term. In part, that also hides some of what's underneath, what really makes up every piece and part to actually be able to bring about an end-to-end solution. Now, end-to-end solutions are not a be-end all of everything. There's always more work to be done. So let's look at a few of the different terms and how people have defined them. So this first slide here is really about equity and pulling out some of the equity examples. Now, I referenced the work of the NDIA, and I applaud what they are doing. I know the executive director, Angela, we used to be in the same geographical location in Ohio. So I've known the work of the NDIA for quite some time. And you can see here that when you start breaking it down, we're talking about communities, capacity, full participation. And there's also the mention of society and democracy. So in a way, we're talking about, and this is not just one term, but the democratization of technology and access. And they're also talking about civic participation. Now, if you look at participation now, you really cannot participate in a lot of things unless you are online, whether it's anything from visiting your local doctor, and I say local because your local doctor may not be available face-to-face, but they might be available virtually. Accessing voting information, accessing the city services, and being able to pay for some of those services. Now, there are often ways to be able to still do that in the traditional sense, but so much more now is geared for online delivery. So it's really about accessing essential services. Other pieces that we have here is around the tools and knowledge, but this was a 2007 quote. And I put that in there because I wanted to show some context. Look what's changed in part over those years. There have been changes, the terminology has changed, the definitions have changed a little bit. But fundamentally, it's still very similar in terms of what is being expressed. And we're also talking about where it's also appearing in legislation or in the US Code. And so I thought this was also another interesting add in terms of that there's still reference to capacity and full participation in society and the economy. There is definitely an economic tie. There is a workforce development tie with the work of digital equity. And it is about trying to bring more people and enable full participation. And you see the word full used multiple times. It's not about a particular subsection or a particular audience or a particular ethnic group. It's about full participation. And that is something that I think we really need to grasp and get a hold of, that it's not just a urban, rural, or reservation piece. It's about full. And I hate to say it, but full means full. And sometimes you just got to speak plain that way. Then we have digital inclusion. Now, digital inclusion has a lot of similarities, and you will see that in some of the terms and some of the words that are being used. Community level access, broadband. Now, robust broadband connections. Now, you do see some adjectives that come in that start to say, well, it's more than just baseline, but robust applications. And then you're talking about digital literacy. There's a reference there. But it's all about being able to increase access. It's about being able to enable people to use those services and to have opportunities. Those opportunities shouldn't be just restricted to an urban environment. Now, I'm a country boy at heart. I grew up in the country area of Australia, where my hometown, the major cities were, the major industries were timber and also making trains. Those were our major industries. And so growing up in that area, we didn't have access to a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities. So inclusion, and when it talks about opportunities, it's about making those opportunities available to everybody, to be able to provide that level of access, so that way you can see where the innovations and where the ideas can be generated from. If you ever want to see where ideas are being generated from, have a look on Tuesdays with the US Patent and Trademark Office when they post the new patents. I know it's not hot off the press reading, but when you read the patents and you read what is being done, you start to find out that innovation and inclusion is occurring across the country. And often it's not necessarily all in the metropolitan areas. So anyway, that's just an aside, but it really does come back to digital inclusion. Because if you have somebody in the middle of nowhere and they don't have access, they can't even explore what's available, yet the folks in the city might have more readily accessible services. Not universal, but it may be more readily available. Another thing to point out just with this particular side is that the NDIA identifies there are 5 elements of inclusion: affordable, robust services, internet-enabled devices, access to digital literacy and training. Libraries are sometimes the only source available in some small communities where that information and that training can occur. Quality technical support. Okay, technical support is very spotty. It's very hard to get good technical support. I know in the past, I've actually volunteered in some time at libraries, and I've been one of these people who have helped others to get online. And that's the sort of thing that we still need, and we've seen that with different programs. But technical support where somebody can just call and ask a question, not a lot of those services actually exist. And then applications and online systems that are developed to encourage participation. So let's jump to literacy. Now, literacy is a switch. It's a switch when you look at some of the items that are highlighted here. I've tried to highlight some of the words that really do matter in this space. And it's about a lot of it is centered on skill development. just because our generations that are coming through our schools and into colleges now have grown up with the devices and the services and the internet, doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to use it. And I've heard many people say the same thing time and time again. But a lot of the locations that are providing education, whether it's community groups or schools, the skill aspect is somewhat missing. And some of that goes back to a curriculum redesign that occurred sometimes 10, 15 years ago, where there was a more of a switch to conceptual understandings. And there was a move away from the actual nuts and bolts and the mechanics of teaching how to use particular programs or developing a particular skill. It was more focused on the broader concepts. But if you look here at the American Library Association, which I'm a fan of libraries. I grew up in libraries. I've been mentored by librarians. So I will be unapologetic about my love of libraries, because they really have grounded me for decades. And I still love talking to librarians. If you ever want to make a librarian's day, ask them a question. Really, just ask them a question. They love to do the research, not only for you in part, but also to help you. You know, it's about making sure that you know how to fish. So when you look at the digital literacy aspects and the definitions that are provided, it's about finding, evaluating, organizing, creating, communicating, synthesizing, locate, knowing, using. There's so many commonalities right there. And if we could do all those sorts of things, then wouldn't we be a much better society, being able to access that type of information, but then knowing how to apply it? So digital literacy is also at the heart of what we're doing in terms of digital divide and our work. And then I threw in one there from Adobe, right? I wanted to pull something from an industry representative, so to speak. And they've distilled it right down. Let's define digital literacy and explore what it takes to live, learn, and work in a digital society. Okay, it's a little bit of a different take on the other definitions that are presented. So here provides another viewpoint. This is from the NDIA. And once again, I will say, please check out their resources. They've got a lot of information and a lot of great material there. It's easy to find. But anyway, I wanted to point this out because I was looking at this recently, where they were trying to apply some sort of scoring system, a scorecard for each of the states. And Arizona comes out as a 2.7 out of 6. It's actually low. And when you start digging into it, they've actually broken it all down. But they're talking about the unemployed individuals and the lack of foundational digital skills that are in existence. So please, after today, check out their link so you can see the different areas that they are starting to look at across the country with different states. And some states are getting 5s out of 6s and getting really good scores because of some of the things that they're doing both holistically as a state, but also trying to target and being able to meet the needs of the underrepresented or the underserved populations of their state. So check that out, because this is a new data set that I hadn't seen before until I started going through all the different sites and services available from these different organizations. Oh, one last thing I will mention here, in the top right-hand corner, I've got here a digital life. So I'm starting to explore this area myself. So I put in digital life. Literacy, inclusion, equity, education equals economic and workforce outcomes. Now, that's a work in progress. So then when we look at data sources, there's lots of different data sources out there and available to be able to help inform the work. Now, you're probably very familiar with some of these because these are typically used in funding applications and grant applications and referenced by the NTIA and others. So shaped geographic files. using like Google Earth or such, or some other applications like Ezra or some other or ArcGIS. You know, census tracts, census blocks, zip code areas. School districts, what are the boundaries of the school districts? Some of our school districts have some pretty large boundaries, especially once you start getting out into some rural areas. And even within the central of Phoenix, the Phoenix Elementary School District, their boundary might astound you as to how large that district is geographically. But also looking at the electoral areas, the city, county, state, federal designations, where everybody's boundaries are. And the reason to look at those is to know who is involved in the conversation or should be involved in the conversation. Who has an interest? Knowing those sorts of things actually enable you to be able to perform outreach and activities and to be able to help communicate. And then there are the statistical data sets. Well, I think you're probably all familiar with the list that's here. The one that I don't hear very much referred to is the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council. Wow, isn't that a term to have? But there are another data set that's out there, FFIEC. Sorry, that one just jazzes me a little bit because it's a fun one, it's a long one, but it has different things. It's talking about economics and geography and demographics. It's just got a variety. And most of that can be found in the others. However, not everything is in one source. So you've got to use multiple sources. So when I first started looking at the digital divide, more so in the COVID time, now I have been working on it before then, you know, I used about 13 layers of different data sources. I just did a tally just recently looking at my new list. I'm up to 27 different layers of data. And that's from different sources. That's more than straight statistical sources. And one of the sources that you don't see very often is the community. I have actually walked large areas of the community. I've walked areas out Buckeye, Gilbert, and through Central Phoenix. And when you walk a community, you start to see more about what is there, and you start to confirm some of the data that you've seen, but you start to put together a different story about what you're seeing within the community. We've got communities and neighborhoods where the median household income, I know in some of the Phoenix areas, the median household income in this one area I'm aware of is around about $14,500 a year. And you look at the installed infrastructure and you could almost walk between pole to pole because of the lattice of different cable providers, power providers. There's so much there on old wooden poles. So when you walk that type of community, you're able to start to put together a story, and it sometimes confirms the data, other times it doesn't. Or it might show that, hey, there's a pocket here that we really need to look at. But there's so much out there when it comes to data, but putting it all together, it's all about trying to meet the needs of the different stakeholders to be able to communicate to them which message that they need to see. Because very rarely would someone need to see all 27 layers, but maybe they need to see 6 to 10 layers of the data or 5 layers. It's about meeting the needs for what you're trying to get across. So then my research, and just going to try and go through this somewhat quicker, and that is I'm actually doing my PhD on the digital divide. And my statement is, it's not known which solutions will address the barriers to closing the digital divide. Now, it may change just a little bit. I'm still firming it up right now. But we're talking about what it means. And on screen, you can see some of my brain dump. Some of it's just a snippet of my notebook. I never leave home without a sketch pad, and I know I'm a digital guy, but I still use pens and paper. So what I'm doing is I'm identifying the thought leaders and experts across the space. So I'm creating a massive spreadsheet with names of people, the entities they represent or are involved in, and then how to connect with them. My idea is to be able to develop a conceptual model for the digital divide that truly tries to bring in all the different facets, features, functions, stakeholders, to try and build that inclusive model, and not necessarily a model that is strictly just focused on one aspect of it, but really try and bring all those different pieces and parts together. And so I'm going to be interviewing thought leaders and experts from across the country as part of my PhD program. It's a grounded theory research design for those in academia. It's very much rooted in collecting data from a whole variety of sources, not just from empirical literature. But it's trying to bring it together to be able to develop a model. So here's some information that I've been collecting now for a couple of years. This was all pre-dissertation. So I've been collecting Google alerts on topics of the digital divide and developments and broadband initiatives for 2 years. I've now got 33,702, and I'm sure that number is now higher because there's a bunch I haven't processed yet, of individual references to the topic of digital divide. And as you can see, here are some of the keywords and phrases that I've been tracking. And this is just a selection of them. I've got about 300 to 500. Actually, I've got a total of around 500 keywords and areas that I'm tracking. And this is a selection of those that I thought might be relevant for us. And that look at the words that come up: student, rural, broadband, equity, pretty high, economic and economy. Okay, got both of them in there. They come up pretty high as well. Digital equity, inclusion, literacy, transformation. And you can start to see where they're scaffolded. Here's another one, and this is more of a geographical view. These are references into specific states. And Arizona actually appears pretty highly. 47 entries that actually call out Arizona. California, 122. California has some very large broadband initiatives that are underway. There's a lot of work happening in Texas. Some great examples around San Antonio and Dallas in terms of what they're doing in terms of rollouts and different types of hybrid technology solutions. And then you have New York State, Tennessee, Washington, Maryland, Washington. Now, when you look at countries that are specifically called out, now, if it's a US state that's being called out, it's not going to necessarily be called out as the USA. But you can see that there are other countries that are being called out quite a bit as well. And I know I'm from Australia, but this is what the data is showing me. 114 references to Australia that have come through the collection. India, 281 references to India. That was a surprise for me. But then I started digging into looking at what that meant. And there's a lot of really interesting work happening in India, particularly in remote communities. For instance, people are downloading the entire Wikipedia and other resources onto flash drives, connecting it to a Raspberry Pi, and then sending it to communities so that they have access to information, including downloading open educational resources. And just lastly, just a couple of things around future research and other opportunities. Here are some topics. I call it a statement of work in part because it's like, this is what I'd like to do. But these are some other options in terms of topics: mapping a continuity of care, blending services, rural, urban, and reservations, continuous service to eliminate divides grounded in opportunities. These are some areas in data and mapping and solutions. And we're seeing more solutions now being presented in the form of case studies. And so I've got a treasure trove of new case studies that are coming out that I've recently found for specific technologies: 4G, 5G, mesh networks, wired. Fixed wireless is really starting to make its presence felt because of the economics, as well as fiber. But not everyone's blessed to be like Chattanooga, Tennessee, who rolled out 9,000 miles of fiber. And their system cost something like, I think it was 278 million or something, some phenomenal amount. But they are one city that is very well situated. But they started that several years ago. So digital divide research, it's a journey of discovery. And yes, this is me up an 80-foot pole. So I'm a practitioner. I go from the hardware to the software to the cloud to the strategic, and I can do that all before lunch. It just depends on the day. But it's about providing an end-to-end perspective. What does it actually take to, one, do the work? And then two, while you're doing that, how are you crafting a vision for the future? We still need that vision piece, and it's well beyond access. And when we talk about digital equity and digital inclusion and digital literacy, it's all rolled into one. It's about providing that vision for our communities for a full participation in society and for individual and community benefit. Not everyone's going to have the same experience, but everyone should have the same type of opportunity to express their individuality, their community needs, for them to be able to better themselves and better what they would like to do in life, to pursue. Now, as a newly naturalized citizen in the US, I got to vote last week and thoroughly enjoyed that experience. So whatever we can do collectively to be able to participate and to help close the digital divide and address all these multiple facets, that's really on each of us as part of our one, civic responsibility, but two, for the betterment of humanity. And I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Awesome stuff, Paul. Awesome stuff. Questions or comments for Paul?
Hey, Paul, this is Tremaine here from Illuvian. I just have to admit, I'm kind of shocked to see that how the 8% on the Native American on that research you did. I'm just fathomed by it.
Yeah, that was, I was really surprised, and maybe I'm not using the right keywords, but I was really surprised too. And I really want to dig into that because I believe that there's a lot of great things happening in Native American communities.
Right.
But it's not hitting the media. It's not
Yep.
getting picked up by the masses.
That's what I was going to say
Exactly.
too.
To share
Exactly.
those, to share those stories. And that is to me, that's a detriment because it doesn't showcase what is happening. And there's some great tribal communities, Native American communities who have these technology cooperatives, and they're doing innovative things. And we can all learn what's happening on the reservations and how they're bringing people up and connecting them. So yes, thanks for sharing that. But that was one of my observations too. I was really surprised by it because otherwise you got to go hunt for the information.
Right. I appreciate that
Paul,
data. Thank you.
So Bob, when we started this task force, so we want to complicate things. We started this task force, we called the Digital Access Task Force, which is not even a term anybody uses anymore. We thought we were at the cutting edge at that point, probably were. And now, of course, things have moved on and terms have changed since that time. But the intent was to recognize that it was both the digital inclusion as well as broadband. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. We might have to change the name of the task force.
Janet?
That was amazing, Paul. Thank you so much. Standing O, absolutely. I wanted to know if you had also documented in your research what the state infrastructure is for the broadband infrastructure. So for instance, many states, the state broadband director reports directly to the governor through the Office of Innovation in Nevada. And I think it might be the same in Alaska. Did you pay note to those? Do you have some great experiences there?
Oh, I wish I had more time to be able to do that. I've got very little, actually. I've been going off of what I was seeing from Jeff and other entities, like
Right.
the Arizona Commerce Authority and and others about building out the state networks. There's a group out there that I think is undertapped, and that is the school districts and the libraries. We've got to be able to bring them all together in terms of a network per se. There are other states who actually have really good networks or that exist in those spaces. Arizona doesn't. Arizona is very much siloed.
Right.
Every location is that way. So, but Janet, I would love to see more on that piece. I really haven't had the bandwidth, so to speak, to devote to it. Do I know where it exists? Yes, I know where a lot of that information exists.
It would be very interesting to look at that collectively. And then I think it's also just genius that in Utah, they combine the educational network and the health network. And they've been friends and colleagues in telehealth for many years, and talk about maximizing your network, right?
Yeah.
So there's been great stories and experiences, and it's wonderful. I mean, not just nationally, but internationally. That was just awesome. Thanks.
Yeah,
Hey.
I've got a lot of friends in the UETN network in Utah, so I'm in contact with them.
Hey, Paul, one of the things that I was thinking on the Native American 8% thing is that many times the mentions are not using that specific terminology. It's going to be tribe specific, which might be why your flags are not hitting as often as you'd like. So it would be Navajo Nation or White Mountain Apache tribe or things like that. It may be that they're making more specific references rather than using the term Native American.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those in my index of keywords, but that's an area that I certainly can expand as I go forward with my dissertation. But then rolling it all up, it'll still be a very interesting number to see how it all rolls up across those terms to see what examples are out there. I think there's some great examples. They just need to be documented, and they need to be shared out in a wider fashion.
You've done a fantastic job. That was absolutely amazing.
So, I mean, stay tuned for my dissertation. I'm hoping to have my dissertation done by August of next year, 2023. So I decided during COVID, why not start a PhD? Add it to the list of things that I'm working on. So hopefully it will come out at that time. So I'm working towards it.
Well, we've just begun to touch the amount of information that Paul has in that head of his, his computer and wherever else all that stuff resides. But we could probably spend, Paul, probably 2 or 3 days having you continue to share the knowledge and information that you have. But I think it'll be very useful as we move ahead with our planning here in the state.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, stay tuned for the work. And I think we're all part of the work. We're all part of the same collective. But what we're doing is we're doing different facets and different pieces of it each. It's how do we bring it all together? How do we bring that vision? The vision is so important. We've got to get the vision nailed down. And it's not necessarily nailed down to where it's a specific picture, because we're building a puzzle where there are no edge pieces. We're putting it together. We don't know what the final picture is going to look like. There may never be a final picture, but we keep building it. So it's a puzzle with no edge pieces. Well, let's keep building the puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It was a great presentation this morning. I knew it was going to be, having been able to interact with you the last couple of years. It was just phenomenal how much information and research you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, I want to jump back here for a second, share the screen. So next thing on the agenda, which is very important and very timely, is that the FCC has released their application deadline for the Affordable Connectivity Outreach Grant Program. And so wanted to spend some time on that this morning. First of all, I've talked to Mala and others about sharing the information this morning about that program, what the implications are, the time frame, and then also there is, excuse me, there is a webinar tomorrow, I believe, about that program. So with that, Mala, can I turn it over to you first?
Absolutely, happy to share that information. Wow, that is a hard act to follow, Paul. And it almost sounded like a keynote address. I think it was, very motivating and inspiring. And it gives us context to what we are doing. Now, from that magical to the mundane, that's where this is going to go. But nevertheless, it is necessary. It is the potatoes. It is what is necessary to keep us going. So, and forgive me for not turning my camera on. I'm at the part of the house where I get quiet. If I go to where the internet is good, it's going to be noisy with my little grandson around. I can tune it out, but I don't think the Zoom will tune it out for you guys. So you got to forgive me for that.
Mala, before you move ahead, so Lisa, I know you're online also, so feel free, and after Mala, to give you some time to share your thoughts also, since you're very tuned to FCC and Lyle and so forth. So go ahead, Mala.
Absolutely, Lisa, please feel free to jump in. You don't have to ask permission. Just jump in whenever you need it. So I'm Mala Muralidharan, and I work at the State Library. I work on E-rate and promoting everything else, ACP, ECF, and currently working on some telehealth projects as well. We recently got a notice of funding, NO4, from FCC about the Affordable Connectivity Program, the ACP program, which is a grant program with $14.2 billion for discounted internet, $30 a month for regular households that are below low income level, and $75 a month for tribal households, and $100 discount for devices, laptops, tablets, etc. I mean, that's a very, very simplified way of putting it, but there's more details that you can check it out online. Up to date, about 14 million households have nationally enrolled. Of those, about 327,000 are from Arizona. This is as of last week. With this grant opportunity, it's a grant for outreach, for reaching out to the folks that actually need ACP. And just up front, I want to say the deadline for this is January 9th. So as Steve said, this is coming up pretty close, especially if you think of the holidays that come in between. So, if you work backwards on the timeline, there's really not too much time to apply for this. FCC expects to make the complete review and make awards before March 10th of next year. And all of these applications have to be submitted through grants.gov. The program itself has 4 complementary grant programs. The National Competitive Outreach Program is the first one. The Tribal Competitive Outreach Program is the second one. Those are the 2 for which the NOFA has been released. The third one is Your Home, Your Internet. And the 4th is the ACP Navigator Pilot Program. These 2 have not been released yet. They are planning to release it on the 21st of November. That's also coming up shortly. The amount for the grant is about $60 million for the National Competitive Outreach Program and $10 million for the Tribal Competitive Outreach Program. Now, what is the goal of the grant? The grant goal is to reach, to enable trusted partners. Again, here the emphasis is on trusted outreach partners to promote and increase awareness of and the participation in the program to eligible households, especially those that have been historically underserved communities. So this is to help outreach to those communities. The objective is to expand and support diverse but impactful outreach efforts that have a large impact, that reach a diverse community, to raise awareness as well as to help in enrolling them into the program. So the goal is not just to have them enrolled. That number is important, but raising awareness is important as well. The grant application would be evaluated according to the NOFO on the extent to which an applicant would target the underserved and low-income households or individuals, especially those that have traditionally not been served. To the other point for evaluation of these grants will be the extent to which the applicant would target and outreach communities that have low ACP participation so far. So we do have online the zip codes of the places that have been funded so far, but that gives you the subset of those that have not been funded. And if we are targeting those areas, then you get a brownie point, of course. The extent to which they target minorities, people with disabilities, people who have been marginalized so far, communities like the veterans community and others who need it, but who have been kind of, I wouldn't say ignored, but have not been impacted so far with all of the funding that has come through. The other factor that they speak about in this is that grant applications from state government entities or territorial governmental entities, they have another criteria that they need to fulfill, and that is that they should share the computer matching agreement with USAC. Now, this has been, this will create problems because of the privacy clause, because it means that all of the computer data that you have about SNAP, about Medicaid, about NSP, the National School Lunch Program, NSLP data, and all that should be shared with USAC if the state government entity or the territorial government entity is applying. The reason is because that actually makes this go faster and makes the matching transparent, or not to us, but at least to USAC, between USAC and the computer and the state, so that it's easier to approve those applications. That might be a stumbling block for the state entities that are participating. But again, they are not the only ones that can apply for these. They've also said one other clause that they have put is that if there is a cost match that can be put up, or cost share that can be put up, that would be a tiebreaker in case the grants are completely used before they come to.
So Molly, can you just clarify that there is no match requirement? But
no,
if
yes,
you provide
right.
it, as you mentioned, that then that it will help with particularly, as you said, with a tiebreaker or whatever.
That's correct. There is no cost match required. There's no cost share required. But if you can put it up, then that could be a bonus. Having said that, the minimum floor amount that the applicant might apply for is 50,000. The maximum ceiling amount that one can apply for is $1 million. Applicants requesting $1 million will need to demonstrate that this outreach is a multi-state or national level. It could be a national level reaching different tribes, different communities, national level reaching different minority groups or regional level. It has to be beyond the state borders. The projected number of awards are about 200 to 400 awards, depending on the total numbers that are applied for, and has to be expended within 24 months of receiving the grant. The projected end date is 2025 March. So there's about 24 months to use the money. The eligible applicants, like I said, are state governments and subsidies, local governments and subdivisions, tribal governments and their subdivisions, public housing agencies, tribal housing entities, social service providers like food bank, community transportation, childcare organizations, education organizations like schools, libraries, and other institutions of higher learning, workforce development organizations, and nonprofit organizations, and community-based, faith-based organizations, and social service organizations. So, it's almost the whole gamut of anyone who's got roots into the community and who can be treated as a trusted partner in this. And the things that you can apply for in your budget are for personnel, for paying for staff to go out and do the outreach, travel, supplies, indirect costs are capped at 10%. Some management and administrative costs are also eligible. I don't think I have anything on what is ineligible, but there is, like Steve mentioned, a webinar that is scheduled for Tuesday, November 15th, that's tomorrow, from 1 to 3 Eastern Standard Time. And they will discuss the NOFO in detail. The event will be available on fcc.gov/live, which is where all of their webinars are. I repeat, it's fcc.gov/live. If anyone has any questions, that's the summary of the 50-page NOFO. And Lisa, if you have anything to add, I'd be happy for you to add anything to this.
Yeah, Mala, one other thing, that if it's an outreach partner that's applying for the grant, they will favor those outreach partners who can prove that they've already been working in this area and have had success.
Absolutely.
So that right there is a big plus.
Yeah.
For those outreach partners who've been plugging away at this for many months and who can now get some help with that.
Right. Thanks, Lisa, for pointing that out.
So anybody else, Drew, Aaron, anybody else want to chime in on this grant program?
That was fantastic, Mala. Thank you so much.
Agreed. Thanks, Mala.
Thanks, Evan.
I put a few of the links in the chat so you can register for the event tomorrow, 11 a.m. Arizona time.
And you all should have received an email from me with the information of both the grant program and the webinar tomorrow with the links and everything. So, but thank you for sharing it in the chat also.
Yeah, as Elena pointed out, the registration is not essential, although it's good to register, but you can hop on live, as well as, that space will have the webinar recorded and available to you if you were unable to make that time.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to add about this program? I don't know if any of you have had time yet to think about whether you're going to apply for this or not. It would be helpful to know who in Arizona is planning to apply, and maybe even do some kind of a collaborative grant of some kind. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, let's move on. So I don't believe Sandeep, let's move on with our updates. I don't believe Sandeep is here. One of the reasons we were talking about changing the day and time, he is on, as he said, he's on webinars almost every week, including this time of the day with federal, about all the federal grants and programs and stuff. So he's trying to keep up with all of that. Moving on, Mala, do you have anything from the state library perspective?
Not really. E-rate program, as I mentioned last time itself, we're working on the tribal libraries participation in the program. November 12th is the deadline to apply for the special pilot program that will target about 25 tribal libraries or tribal libraries and school consortiums for one-on-one assistance that will be provided by USAC. I still haven't got a library in Arizona that has not applied and that would like to apply. We have about more than 90% of our libraries are applying for E-rate, which I think is fantastic, but it means that when they have a pilot program like this with no library, with the libraries have never applied, we don't qualify. Really, there are fewer of us that can qualify for such programs. It's a good thing. It's a not so good thing, but that's where it is. 29 waves of E-rate have been funded so far, and $65 million have been committed to the applicants. There's still a ways to go, but hopefully we will get there. And the state master contract that was supposed to end on 30th June of 2023, that is with this cycle, is being extended for one more year. So it will be valid until June 30th of 2024. But the mechanism to get the renewal done for the following year has already been set in motion, because it takes that long for a master contract to be created. In the meanwhile, they will do, State Procurement Office is planning on doing a supplemental state master contract for new service providers that have entered this space. So watch that space. I'll keep talking about it as I get more information. The last thing I would say is that several organizations have signed up to ask, 65 education and national organizations have asked Congress to continue with ECF because of the high demand, and because once the support ends, the schools and libraries will struggle to meet the demand. Just because COVID is in the rear view mirror right now, it doesn't mean that the students don't need it, or the teachers don't need it, or the households don't need it. So there has been a request to provide at least $1 billion appropriation for funding year 2023. Back to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mala? So Mala and Janet, do you guys have anything that you want to say about the telehealth and libraries initiative you guys been working on?
We're still working on it, Steve, on our next project. So there's, we'll report back when there is more substantial information.
Okay. Janet, do you want to add anything?
I think Janet had to leave, Steve.
Okay. And Holly, do you have anything that you want to say?
No, I think Mala covered it all. Thank you.
Okay, so Janet's not here. I think, Sophia, are you online today? I don't think so. Let me see who is online. It looks like our Department of Ed people may not be here today. So Mylan's not here. Kelly, you're not here. Shelby, you're not here today. Okay. Cindy, do you have anything that you want to share?
Yes, so we have a meeting on Thursday of the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network, Thursday from 12 to 1. And we're currently looking at discussing as a group how we can give practitioner input to the digital equity plan, the state digital equity plan, and also to just be supportive of that plan as it moves forward. And so if anybody would like to register or have the link to that meeting, I'm going to put my email address in the chat and you can reach out to me. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions for Cindy?
Hey Cindy, just FYI, NTIA's meeting is on Thursday as well at the same time. Their digital, what is it called? Joint Digital Equity and State Broadband Leaders Network meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think Nicole is going to that, which is why she couldn't come to our meeting. So
yeah, I have it on my calendar too. So just FYI, there may be a few people.
Sure, real good. Thank you.
Hey, Elena and Drew, do you have anything you want to provide an update on the awareness campaign?
Drew, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Our current round of ads has officially ended. And we're developing our retrospective analysis. So we'll have a little bit more to say in the future. But initial results look pretty good. So that's positive. And we're using the most recent batch of ACP enrollment data, which is up through September. And we've seen a notable increase in enrollment through the National Verifier system, which is great. But I'll have more to say in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you. Erin, do you have anything you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks again to everybody for the presentations this morning. It was fascinating and greatly appreciated. We are continuing to travel around the state and meet with communities and do all the work around better understanding what's happening as it relates to barriers and access and resources and assets and all of those really important things. So thank you to everyone who has invited us to be there. Also, we are in the process of finalizing our specific versions of the survey that was distributed in its original form. So those will be relevant for folks who are providers, for people working in education, for community organizations, et cetera. So be on the lookout for those, and we'll have skip logic that'll take you to the place that's relevant for the kind of work that you're doing. That will help us get a better understanding of the space so that we can use those data to inform next steps around action and activity. So that's about it, except for, we're in the process of planning our gala. I still don't know how to say that word. So for those of you who attended last year, thank you so much. It was a fabulous event. We are having the next one. We have our keynote speaker confirmed and several other speakers, and we're beginning to do the outreach and the guest list. So more to come on that, but this year it will be at the Heard Museum, and we are planning to celebrate local champions who are doing amazing work in the digital inclusion space. So looking forward to meeting with all of you and speaking with all of you about that. Again, open invitation for anyone here. I've been meeting with hundreds of folks around the state. If I haven't talked with you yet, I would absolutely like to. I'll put my email in the chat and look forward to talking with everyone.
Thank you, Erin. So Nicole is not here, and she was one of the people that asked that we might consider changing the meeting because it conflicts for her with some other meetings that take place.
Do you have any idea of times or dates that you want to switch it to?
Nope, just wanted to see how people felt about even thinking about changing. But I think for now, I think we're going to stay where we are. unless people have some other thoughts. Okay, I don't believe Derek is here today. Rory, I don't think you're even here today. So I think we're about done today. Are there any other comments, announcements this morning?
Steve, this is Mark Goldstein.
Yeah, Mark.
In other FCC news, they have actually announced legitimate goal dates for the new map that drives the entire BEAD $42.4 billion state block grant program. And so the beta, I guess it would be, of the new map with what they call the data fabric down to every location is supposed to be online November 18th. There's a challenge period for states already underway, but the FCC, more importantly, has announced that they will have finalized the maps and made the determinations for state allocations by, I believe it was June 30th of next year. So that's sooner than many of us feared. We'll see if they can hone to that schedule.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Anything else that anybody wants to share? Okay, if not, I think we're done. We'll see you all next Monday. Any other questions, comments? So anybody who wants to stay online I'm going to stop sharing. And anybody wants to stay online, going to stop recording. And anybody who wants to stay online to Kibitz. Paul, I don't know if you're going to hang around if anybody wants to chat with Paul.